Good afternoon to some, good morning to others, and good evening to even others. We have quite a few people on the webinar, which is fantastic, and I definitely wanted to thank everyone for having the opportunity to join the webinar. I hope everyone had a great holiday season and a safe and happy new year. And as we start 2016, I know that all of us here at Manage Engine are very excited for 2016 and some of the things that we're working on, as well as some of the information that we want to share with you. Today we're going to be talking about something that I feel almost every organization, certainly every Active Directory administrator, has struggled with at least one time or another, and that is the ability to monitor changes that occur to Active Directory. Now, as an Active Directory administrator myself, this is certainly one of those areas that I really tried to find solutions for, but it seemed like every avenue that I took trying to use the Microsoft solutions, I came up short. So really that's what we're going to talk about today, is how can we leverage the Microsoft solution to get control of things that are happening in our Active Directory, and then possibly use some other solutions to show us what's happening with an Active Directory. Just as a brief introduction, my name is Derek Melber, and I am currently the technical evangelist of the AD Solutions team here at Manage Engine. I'm also an Active Directory MVP, and I've been an Active Directory and Group Policy MVP for the better part of, I guess, 13 or 12 years or something like that now. So quite a long stretch. I have written quite a few books, and I have a lot of information out on the web. The latest book that I wrote out of 15 was the Group Policy Resource Kit, which you see here on your screen. And then I also have the Active Directory blog, which I think everyone on this webinar would benefit from. And if you just go to the Manage Engine main website and go to Community, there's a drop down there for blogs, and there's an Active Directory blog. It's an excellent location for you to get information that I publish, not only about Manage Engine products, but also just in general, trends that are going on, as well as solutions to things that are in Active Directory. I also wanted to point you to some seminar dates that we have. These seminars are live, as well as our user conferences. I will be at RSA in San Francisco, which I'm sure many of you will be. Please stop by our booth. We'll have a booth there at RSA, and I'd love to shake your hand and meet you. We will also be in Dubai in early March. That is a user conference. And then we start our 2016 World Tour in Spain. We'll be going to Madrid and Barcelona, and then we'll be going to Portugal, and then we'll be hitting 3 different cities in Germany in late April. And then the World Tour just continues in early May all the way through the end of the year, just like it did last year. And this year what we're going to be doing is we're going to have 2 different topics. We will be having a next generation topic, as well as a security hardening focus. So that will be very exciting. We will also be having some webinars on security hardening as well. So I think that's enough of the logistics. I guess I will finalize the logistics with that is my email address. Please, if you have any questions about the webinar, any questions about our products, or just Active Directory, Group Policy, security in general, please email me. It's really my job as an MVP to help out the community as much as possible, answering questions and trying to get solutions for things that you're working on. So please email me. I really like to get emails and help out my fellow administrators. So let's move on and talk about the agenda for today. As far as today, what I really want to focus on is this whole idea of how do we set up, control, and then access the changes that are occurring in Active Directory. So first of all, we need to talk about what is the definition of change monitoring in Active Directory. And then after defining the change monitoring in Active Directory, we need to go in and look at how we set that up. So we need to look at that first. Sorry, I keep getting chats and I'm trying to double task, and it's sometimes tough for me. Then we need to just set this up, and we're going to use the auditing that's built into Windows to do that. And then we'll talk briefly about advanced auditing. Some of you most likely have heard of advanced auditing. It is a newer technology, certainly not new technology, that Microsoft has, and we'll talk about why it's important for you to set up advanced auditing. Once we get change monitoring enabled and set up and going, we need to go into the security log and look at the results. So we're going to do that. And then what we're going to try to do as a team is we're going to try to look at some common events that most admins want to track, and we're going to try to find those within the security logs, trying to get reports for ourselves. And then, of course, try to do some fancier stuff, such as set up continuous monitoring and alerting with those as well. So let's first of all really address the idea of what is change monitoring. Well, in my mind, what change monitoring is the ability to track all changes that occur within Active Directory. Now, of course, you know, many of us that are Active Directory administrators, you know, we try to think of our daily tasks. You know, I create users, I modify user properties, I create groups, modify groups, but it's more than that. I want to know if objects move in Active Directory, because if they move in Active Directory, they're going to get different group policy settings. Also, I want to know if group policy changes. I want to know if certain aspects of my environment change, like my password policy or possibly user rights. So it's not only the idea of basic objects in Active Directory. I want to know if anything in Active Directory changes. And this is really where the complexity comes into my definition of change monitoring, which is I want to encompass everything. But it's not only the complexity of tracking everything in Active Directory, it's also that I want to know the details. I need to know who made the change, which object was changed, when it was changed, if possible, the old setting and the new setting. Because if I just have an entry that says this user changed, but I don't have the details, that really doesn't give me much information. Now I'm going to have to do more research. So really in one spot, what I need is I need all the information about the change that occurred so that I can take action if I need to take action. So when we talk about change monitoring, I think we really have three different issues that we are trying to tackle. First and foremost, as administrators, we need to be notified of changes that occur in Active Directory. It's impossible for us to see what's happening behind the scenes in Active Directory, so we need to have notifications. We also need to have a history report. As Active Directory administrators, we know that if something changes today, that may have a trickle effect on things that happened weeks ago. So we need to have reports that are going to give us insight into the overall picture of what's happening within Active Directory. And then finally, one of the things that this is going to help with is with your compliance reporting and with your internal and external auditors. One of the things that we really strive to do is create solutions that will help not only administrators but also others that are kind of on the outskirts of Active Directory, and certainly your auditors and your security professionals are part of those. So we really try with our change monitoring solution to solve three different things. So this is my idea of change monitoring and what I want to do. Now, how are we going to get change monitoring enabled? Well, first and foremost, we need to set up auditing. So within Active Directory, actually just within group policy, we have the ability to configure auditing. Now, this term auditing here is a little confusing, well, at least it is to me, because auditing is more of a task that's done as a non-administrator. But think about it this way. Within Windows, the term auditing in this context means to track behavior. Well, that's exactly what we want to do with what we're trying to solve here. All the changes in Active Directory is a behavior of something, whether it be a system or a human. So that's really what we're trying to set up. Now, if we jump into my Active Directory environment, and we go to group policy, you're going to see that I have quite a few GPOs and I have quite a few OUs. Now, let me kind of guide you through your options that you have of setting up auditing. You could go to the domain controller's OU, configure a new GPO, link it to the domain controller's OU, and then configure auditing in that group policy object. Because we're only talking about tracking Active Directory changes here, that would suffice for the initial set of tracking of changes. But what we're going to do by the end of today is not only talk about Active Directory changes, we're going to talk about the idea that you can actually look at and report and alert on changes that occur to your file servers, changes that occur to other servers in your environment. So that's why I have a GPO set up here at the top at my domain level. And inside of this GPO, I have configured the audit policy. Now, the audit policy, of course, is under your computer configuration because it's modifying computer settings, under our Windows settings, security settings, and then local policies. Now, right here is the audit policy. Now, the audit policy has 9 different areas that you can configure. You do not have to configure all of those different areas. It depends on what you're wanting to track. Now, you will see that I have the majority of areas configured here. Again, it's because in my demo lab environment here, I'm actually tracking more than just Active Directory changes. Now, what we want to do as administrators is we want to optimize what we're tracking, because we all know that the more we track, the more activity is going to occur on that machine, in this case a domain controller, and the faster the logs are going to fill up. So what we have is we have a document that we can send to you. If you email me, I will give you the link to this document, and it has full disclosure of every setting that you need to make here in the audit policy, depending on what you want to track. Because that's what's important, is for your environment, what exactly are you wanting to track. Now, each and every audit policy, as you can see here, has both success and failure as options. Now, I can do success, I can do failure, or I can do success and failure. Now, why would I want to do failures? Because if I'm just tracking behavior, would I want to look at the changes that occurred? Well, not all the time. It's often that what we want to see is we want to see when someone attempted to modify something. Also, what we want to do is look at maybe logon failures, because with looking at logon failures, we can actually track people that are trying to hack into our Active Directory environment. And because the domain controllers actually are trying to authenticate and they're the ones failing, we can track that information as well. So it's important to understand exactly what you want out of the audit policy and what you want to look at before you come in here and track it down. And again, we have a document that helps you walk through that information. So inside of a group policy, you are going to configure the audit policy. Now, if you noticed when I was showing you the group policy that I had configured, I actually didn't modify the default policy. What I had configured was a new GPO. Now, why is that the case? Do I have to do that? Well, the answer to I have to is no. You do not have to create a new GPO. Should you? In my opinion, yes. And here's the reason why. Those default GPOs, the default domain policy and the default domain controllers policy GPOs, are GPOs that Microsoft obviously put in your environment and are aware of. And these GPOs could be modified in a service pack or a hotfix update. Would it happen? I don't know. I'm just not going to trust Microsoft that they're not going to do that. So that's why I create a new GPO and put my settings in that. That way I'm keeping myself separated from the Microsoft environment in case they decide to make modifications. So inside of the audit policy, you're going to go in and you're going to make the modifications of the areas that you want to track. You're going to set up success and you're going to set up failure depending on exactly what you want to get out of those particular settings. Now, I'm certain that most of you on this webinar have done at least this at some level to track something on a Windows server. The audit policy is not something that is mysterious. It's just we don't use it all the time to track Active Directory changes. Now, if you decide to go in at this point and you make these modifications and then you go to the security log, what you're going to find is that absolutely nothing shows up in that security log. And the reason for this is that we don't have everything set up properly. Because when we start talking about changes that are occurring to objects in Active Directory, such as files, folders, and even Active Directory objects, we have to set up one more piece. And it's my opinion that this one more piece is really what confuses most administrators, because the documentation really isn't out there for it. But here's the rest of the story. The secret that you need to configure is you need to set up the ACL. Actually, it's the SACL, the Security Access Control List. And the Security Access Control List is what is going to finally enable you to track all the changes that occur in Active Directory. Now, if we jump back to my domain environment and I go to my domain node within Active Directory users and computers, let's go to the right tool, you will see that I can right-click, go to Properties, under Properties, go to Security, and then under Security, go to Advanced, and this is where I see my SACL. The SACL is this auditing tab. The permissions, often referred to as the ACL, is actually the Discretionary Access Control List, the DACL. And if we go to the SACL, you will see that I have all the configurations here of what I want to track. Now, let's start putting things together. You remember that on my very first slide, I talked about what my definition of change monitoring was. And I said that I wanted to track computers, groups, OUs, users, group policy. So this is where you actually make the final configuration of what you want to track. And this is actually the powerful part of change monitoring within Active Directory. Once we get the auditing set up, that's only the first piece. Now what we need to do is go in and tell the system exactly what we want to track. This is where now we get information to show up inside of the security log. This is really where we have the final piece put in place. And once you do this, you now have all of your domain controllers tracking changes to Active Directory. So at this point, really, you're done. But I want to talk about one more piece. And that one more piece is advanced auditing. Now, advanced auditing is a technology that Microsoft was working on in Windows Server 2008 and really finalized it in Windows Server 2008 R2. So if you have domain controllers that are Windows Server 2008 R2 or later, such as 2012, then you want to take advantage of advanced auditing. Because what advanced auditing does is it expands what you can actually track with what's changing in Active Directory. Now, Microsoft also kind of made advanced auditing in conjunction with a tool called Security Compliance Manager, which we're really not going to focus on here, but at least I wanted to give you some information in the slides. So advanced auditing will allow you to track more information. Advanced auditing is also part of group policy. Now, if we go back to my domain, I'll actually show you in the group policy where this advanced auditing is. Now, if we go to my normal GPO that we were at, I'll show you where the normal auditing was, which is here under my local policies. That's my audit policy right there. But if you go down in the list below the audit policy, at the very bottom of the security section, you have advanced auditing. And advanced auditing gives you the ability to actually track granular objects. So I may not want to track contacts. I just want to do computers and groups and users. Well, I can do that with advanced auditing. So really, advanced auditing does two things for us. First of all, advanced auditing is going to give us the ability to look at more information about what is changing with Active Directory for the objects we want to track. And two, advanced auditing allows us to narrow what we want to look at. And why is that important? That's important because we want to track only what we care about for two reasons. First, we want our logs to be as efficient and small as possible. If we start putting information in a log with things that we don't care about, now it's going to force us to go through more information. Two, we just want to be able to report on what's important to us. So if we only have what we want in the log, that's going to be easier for us to do. So really, advanced auditing is going to give us better performance, better efficiency overall for hardware resources, as well as actually trying to find information inside of the change log. Now, because advanced auditing is a little more complex, it's a little more complex with the configuration. This is just kind of a summary of what you need to configure. Again, you email me and I will send you a link to the document that gives you both auditing and advanced auditing configurations so that you have the optimum configuration to track only what you need to track in your environment. All right, so where are we at? We have gone into group policy and we have configured the audit policy for Server 2008 and before, and we have configured advanced auditing for Server 2008 R2 and later domain controllers. We linked that GPO to the domain level. Then we went into Active Directory users and computers and we configured the auditing tab for your properties of the domain. This is where you configure what exactly you want to track. And we're done. Now all we need to do is go to the security log and look at the results. Because all of the events that are audited show up in the security log in the event viewer. So if we go to my domain controller and we go to the event viewer, which is here, and we go to the security log, you will see that we are tracking information. I have 144,000 events in this one log. So really, all we need to do is parse this log to get reports on the information that we're trying to track. Well, that's exactly what we're going to try to do coming up. But we do need to talk about some limitations. This is one domain controller, but if I have multiple domain controllers, I'm going to have to go to the log on each domain controller because whichever domain controller made the change is the domain controller that has the track change in its log. And the logs aren't replicated between domain controllers. So if you have 10 domain controllers, you have 10 unique logs. And if you have approximately 150,000 events in one log, and you have 10 domain controllers, that means you're going to have approximately 1.5 million events across all of your domain controllers. So now you can start to see where the complexity comes in and why you haven't done this before in your environment using the Microsoft solutions. But we're going to still try to use the Microsoft solution. We're going to desperately try to do that. Now, what we want to do is we want to try to find information in our log. Now, I'm going to go back here to my log, and what we're going to do is we're going to just try to do something that I'm sure we all want to know about. So I'm going to pose the question, when did our domain admins group change in my demo environment? So what we're going to do is we're going to come to this option called Find, and we're going to try to find domain admins. So I'm going to try to find domain admins in this list, 144,000 events. It's scouring, looking at not only the titles, but looking at the contents. And this could take some time. And unfortunately, depending on how many domain controllers we have, we might have to do this multiple times. So, you know, typically in my seminars, I show you more options, which bear even less fruit. But what we're seeing here is a potential issue. And that potential issue is we may not have domain admins in this log. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. We will get back to that concept in a minute. But let's first of all kind of walk through some questions. And we'll get to that idea of the domain admins in just a minute. So did you know that Microsoft updated the event viewer starting in Windows Vista and Server 2008? And they did this by adding in some new technologies. One of them is a custom view. And if any of you use the event viewer on a regular basis, I highly recommend that you start using the event viewer on a newer operating system such as a Windows 7 or Server 2008 R2 machine, because these custom views are pretty powerful. And they allow you to actually parse through information a little bit faster to try to see what's going on in your environment. So, for example, if I go to a custom view that I've created, I have group changes, and you'll see that I only have 2 group changes in the log. So this custom view allows me to parse things pretty quickly. Now, of course, in a production environment, you're going to have many more than 2 changes to groups. But again, this is a lab test type environment that I use for my demos, so I don't have that many. But you can clearly see that I parsed through 144,000 events, getting down to 2 with the custom view. The next question that I have is, how big can the security log get? Now, this actually might help us understand why we didn't find the domain admins group. Now, if we look at the Microsoft configurations, we're going to see that there is a maximum security log size. Now, let's jump into the live environment and kind of poke around here a little bit. First and foremost, what I want to look at is I want to look at the security log, and I want to go to the properties. And you'll see here that I have a maximum size, but it really doesn't guide me too much. So instead of looking at that view, I'm going to come in here to Group Policy. And within Group Policy, I'm going to come down here to my security settings, my event log, and I have maximum security log size. Now, this maximum security log size here is actually explained in the tab. Now, it says that the maximum log size has a theoretical maximum of 4 gig. Now, I think all of us probably have a USB stick or some kind of a small memory chip that we use from machine to machine or device to device. I know I have them in my phone and my tablet that can hold like 512 gig. So this isn't very big. And really, the 4 gig isn't even what Microsoft recommends. They're saying practically they recommend 300 meg. Now, if you think about what this is going to do to us, what this is going to do to us is make our logs smaller. And if we actually use the Microsoft recommendation, now we see why we have such few events and why possibly our domain admins doesn't show up in here. Because the way the log works is it's first in, first out. And it will automatically overwrite the events as needed, and that's the way we should have this set up. So if we come back here to our properties, we have override events as needed. And that's typically what most admins set up. So what were to happen if my domain admins group changed before the 10th of January? Well, guess what? It's not in this log. So I'm not even going to have it in the log. So the security log size now becomes extremely important with the overall picture of change management, because we as admins, we need to have a history of what's going on. Your auditors want a history of what's going on, and we can't just use the current log for that information. But wait a minute. Does the event viewer back up the security log when it fills up? That would be beneficial. Now, I'm sure that most of you said, no, it doesn't back it up because you went and bought a third-party product to help you with archiving of the logs. But watch this. This is not a special version of Windows. If I right-click on Security and go to Properties, Archive the log when full. It's right here. This is a brand new feature that Microsoft added with Server 2008. You actually can control this inside of Group Policy. If I come in here to a Group Policy object, and I go down to my Windows components, Event Log Service, Security, I can do a backup, and I can even give the log file path. Extremely powerful. Now, how does this work? Well, the way this technology works is as soon as the log fills up, it makes a backup to this log file path with a time date stamp of that information. Now, that sounds good, but how do we get an archived log back into the event viewer to actually parse it? That's not too difficult either. You right-click and you open a saved log, and it brings that in. Now, last year, in the July time frame, I was in Sydney, Australia, and there was a gentleman in the seminar that had been tracking his archived logs. And in his environment, again, this is his environment, he had approximately 10 archived logs per day for each domain controller. Now, let's do some new math. In his environment per day, he had approximately 150,000 events per log times 10 domain controllers, that's 1.5 million events, times 10 logs per day, that is 15 million events per day that he had to parse. 15 million a day. And if your domain admins group hasn't changed in the last 30 days, that means that you are going to have approximately 450 million events that you have to go through in order to find the last time domain admins group changed membership. I don't think any of us had that time. And if we're going to use this silly find option that takes forever, it's just nearly impossible. And now our custom view isn't even good because our custom view isn't going to give us the archive information. It's only the real-time information. So now we're really stuck. So even though it backs up the information, it's not in a format that's usable for us to dig out the information that we need. So yeah, Microsoft has come a long way with their event viewer and some of the technologies, but we really need some better stuff. So what about consolidating the logs? Can you consolidate logs from multiple computers into a single log? That might help us with the whole archiving situation. Well, the answer is yes. It's called event log forwarding, and it works with something called subscriptions. And the way this technology works is you actually set up a computer that becomes your centralized logging machine. And you set up subscriptions, and the subscriptions show up in your forwarded events. So you can have consolidated logs. So I could set up a subscription for group changes, point to all of my domain controllers and my selected computers, point to the events related to group changes, and from there I now could have forwarded events instead of just from one machine like the custom view, from all my machines. But again, that log is going to have a certain log size. And when that log size ends up, you're going to have to archive it. You're going to have to somehow get that log back. So we're still kind of stuck. We have these technologies there, but they're just not working for us. They're not aligning exactly what we need. They're really close, but not exactly what we need. But wait a minute. Let's stop thinking about the archive. Let's start thinking about the action itself. What if, when the domain admin group changes membership, it just sends us an email? That way, we don't have to worry about the log. We're just going to get an immediate email. Is that possible with Microsoft technologies? Well, let's look. I'm going to go back here to my security log. I'm going to pick an entry, attach a task, and one of those tasks can be send an email. Oh, this is fantastic. So what I can do is I can associate, and actually let's do this. Let's go to my custom view, my group changes. We know that this is a group change. Right-click, attach a task, and we can actually send an email. Now, how many times do you have groups that change membership compared to just the domain admins group changing membership? What is it, a 1 to 10,000 ratio? 1 to 1,000 ratio? Your domain admins group doesn't change group membership that often. You may have groups in your environment with a script somehow changing group membership every hour, every day. And those are going to generate entries. And there is no way using this task attachment and these events to limit it to just domain admins. So that means that you are going to be receiving a ton of email alerts that have nothing to do with domain admins. And you're going to still have to go through all of those emails trying to determine if any of them are related to domain admins. So again, we have a technology that we want, it's just not granular enough for us to use it. So it's limiting us on exactly what we need. So in the end, I really think the event viewer has too many limitations. It's too small. It doesn't hold enough. Even if we archive it, we have to import those logs back. The events are hard to decrypt, and we're going to have to somehow analyze them. We're going to have to go to every DC, or we're going to have to somehow consolidate the logs. The alerting isn't detailed enough. We can't get down to the entry that we want. And there is no reporting. If anyone can show me where in this interface I have the ability to generate reports, that would be fantastic. But it doesn't work that way. Microsoft did not design the event viewer to really be that useful. Yes, it's here, but it's not a tool that we can really leverage to get the information that we need. And what information do we need? Well, let's look at some common events. So what I tried to think last year as I toured the world, I tried to pay attention to what things people wanted. People wanted to know when a new user was created. They just want to know. Almost every organization has more than one administrator that can create users. So what admins want is they want to know when anyone creates a user so they can document it, so they have it documented. They want to know when the password policy changes. With attacks that are going on like pass the hash and pass the ticket and all these other privilege elevation attacks, we need to have our security controls in place. We want to know when the domain admins group changes membership. We really want to know when any admin group changes membership. We want to know when service accounts are modified, because our service accounts control servers, services, and applications, and if a service account password is changed or if service account is disabled, we're going to have big problems. Information like that is extremely hard to track down. So how do we do this? Well, the way we do this is with a tool that's designed to do it. So let's take advantage of the information that we have here. This information is extremely powerful. Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't give us a tool to help us solve it. But that's where AD Audit Plus comes in. AD Audit Plus has over 125 predefined reports that allow you to gain access. Now, what I have done is I have gone in and I have looked at modified admin groups and what's been modified. And you will see here that my enterprise admins group has been changed over the last 30 days. But notice, domain admins is not here. So that means that the domain admins group hasn't changed in the last 30 days. Therefore, obviously, if my log only goes back to the 10th, which is 3 days ago, I'm not going to see domain admins in the list. But that's where the tool comes in. The tool allows you to look at the last 6 months, and you can clearly see here that domain admins changed at the beginning of December. But the log doesn't help me with that. Now imagine if you had to import all of the archived logs across all of your domain controllers to find domain admins back to December 7th. That is over 30 days of changes. That is over 500 million entries to find one entry. That is difficult. That's nearly impossible. Now, what you will see here in my list is that I not only have domain admins and enterprise admins, I also have groups such as finance managers. Well, finance managers certainly is not a default group. How in the world does this tool know that finance managers is a group that's an admin group in my environment? Well, AD Audit Plus is not only powerful for giving you the reports, but also customized reports. And the customization of AD Audit Plus is extremely simple. You go to Configuration, you pick the type of object you're controlling, group modification. You go to the report that you want to modify, which this is a default report, and you simply add in any group that you want to show up in the report. It's that simple. When I was in charge of Active Directory, I would have killed for a tool like this because I had to parse through logs. I had to set up scripts and fancy ways to try to manipulate the information. No longer do you have to do that. If you get a new group that you feel is an admin type group, you simply come here and you add it in. It's that simple. So AD Audit Plus gives you all of these default reports, logons, account management with all AD changes, of course details around user, group, computer, OU, GPO, all of these are here. But you can also customize these as well as customize your own. Now, with regard to customizing your own reports, you may be thinking, well, gosh, I don't really know what I want to track. Well, let me feed you some arsenal. One of the things that I have found over the years helping administrators with Active Directory, not only administrators with Active Directory but auditors, is that most administrators struggle with the idea that auditors come in and ask for reports on some crazy things. And one of the things that I find that they ask for reports on is service accounts. Now, service accounts are pretty complex because of the way that they're configured and how many servers that we have. But we at Manage Engine produced a tool for you that's a free tool that helps you with service account management. Now, this tool is completely free to you. You'll see that there are quite a few parts of the tool. Go to our website, download it. It's a pretty awesome tool. Let me show you one piece of this free tool. Service account management allows you to go in, specify the machines that you want to gather services from, and you simply click on Get Service Accounts. Now, this is a list of all those service accounts. Some of them we don't care about, which is why we gave you this filter to show only users. And I see that I have 2 users that are configured as service accounts on this server. It would go across all the servers that you specify in this drop-down list. Okay? This can be exported into a CSV. Once it's exported into a CSV, now you have documentation of all your service accounts and where they're configured. So now you as the admin can set up a custom report for users for service account modification. You want to know when anything changes with that service account, and you simply add in those service accounts into the list. What's the result? Now you have a report under My Reports of service account modification. And in the last 30 days, no service accounts have been modified. That's what you want to know. In the last 6 months, well, we've had quite a few modifications. This is extremely powerful because if someone were to go into Active Directory and modify a service account without you knowing, that would be almost impossible for you to know until a problem occurs. But in my environment, I actually have an alert set up to tell me not only in the report, but in the dashboard, and I can set up alerts to email me when a change occurs. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the service account modification report as my basis for an alert, and my alerts show up in the dashboard as well as I can get an email. This is a game changer. Imagine you can set up alerts for nearly anything that's changing. Look at my alerts that I have set up. OU ACL changes, GPO permission changes, if the default administrator changes, if my admin group changes, if my user rights are modified. I can set up alerts for all of the critical security aspects of my Active Directory and my Windows servers so that I no longer have to look at reports. The reports are for historical views, and for my auditors, I as the admin care about the alerts. This is really where AD Audit Plus has its power. The reports are great, but the alerts really make it all happen. So AD Audit Plus is the tool that we have to solve all of these problems. But remember, we are still leveraging the security log. We're still relying on the back-end Microsoft technology. We're just not using Event Viewer to get the reports because Event Viewer doesn't do reporting. We're not using Event Viewer to set up alerts because it's not granular enough. We want our alerts to work granularly. So we in AD Audit Plus have over 125 default reports. We give you the ability to customize any of the default reports and also create your own custom reports. We also have alerting associated with any report. So then any change that you deem as important, you can set up an alert and you can get emails immediately. This is a real-time system. Emails immediately telling you of that particular change. So what have we talked about today? Well, we talked about the idea of change monitoring. And the idea of change monitoring is the idea that we need to track things that are happening within Active Directory. We do that by setting up auditing and advanced auditing. Those results of the auditing, advanced auditing, and the SACL show up in the security log. The Microsoft solution does not give us the ability to track what we need to track. So, do that. Because we need to overcome the limitations that Microsoft have in the Event Viewer. And in order to track the things that we know that are important, security-related events, we need to have a tool like AD Audit Plus to do the monitoring, reporting, and the alerting. Now, I believe that there was a poll that opened up. I don't know if you guys saw that poll. Excellent. It looks like you guys did see the poll. So I'm going to leave that open a little bit, and let me kind of end as you guys finish off the poll, and we can certainly get some questions answered for you. So how we're going to answer questions is I don't think that we have the time this morning to answer them in the webinar. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask that you email the questions in. You can email them to me or respond to your email request, and we will get back to you with any of those questions that you have. Also remember, my email address is derek@manageengine.com. Please email me with the questions from the webinar, questions about AD Audit Plus, any of our tools, or, I'm going to be honest, anything related to Windows Active Directory, group policy, and security. As an AD and group policy MVP, I have a lot of resources that I can tap into. If I don't know the answer, I can get the answer for you, hopefully. So please rely on us. We are here for you. We are trying desperately to educate administrators to make them more efficient and give them better solutions around Active Directory. That is really our goal. Please also go to our community blog. That blog is weekly updated with fresh and unique information. It is a way for us to keep communication with. I really hope that you enjoyed the webinar. You got a lot of information out of it. Again, email me with questions if you want the document with regard to auditing and advanced auditing. Again, email me and I can send you that as well. With that, I'm certain that everyone has been able to go through the blog. So we are going to end the webinar. I will be posting through the blog when I will be around the world in different cities. So please review that as well. And hopefully, if you are at an event that I'm at, please come up, shake my hand. I would love to meet you in person. So with that, thank you for your time, and thank you for joining the webinar. And until next time, this is Derek Melber and everyone else that's helped out with this webinar. Thank you very much, and regards. Have a good day. Thanks.